Many times we are wounded not because we lack goodness, but because our kindness lacks teeth, allowing those closest to us to become the blades that harvest our misery. In my previous life, my wife Sarah suffered a sudden heart attack without any warning. One of her coworkers was the one who rushed her to the hospital. By the time I raced to the hospital in a blind panic, Sarah had already stopped breathing. I couldn't handle the weight of the news and blacked out right there in the hallway. When I finally woke up, Sarah's body had already been cremated. I didn't even have a moment to grieve before a pack of debt collectors came knocking on my door. It was only then that I discovered, to my horror, that Sarah had secretly racked up millions of dollars in debt. According to her will, I was the sole heir to everything, including the liabilities. 10 years later, I was a broken man scavenging for trash on the streets of Chicago. That was when I saw her, my wife Sarah, who was supposed to be dead. She was behind the wheel of a luxury car, laughing and chatting with her first love, Henry Vance. With a smirk, she tossed $100 bill at me and mocked me, saying she appreciated all the hard work I had put in over the years. My body, already withered from a decade of hard labor, gave out as I died of pure rage right there on the sidewalk. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the very day Sarah supposedly had her heart attack. I am so sorry for your loss. Morrison, you really need to take care of yourself. We did everything we could to save her, but Sarah just didn't make it. Lisa Reynolds, Sarah's best friend and attending physician, spoke with a face full of rehearsed sorrow. She rattled off a string of medical jargon that made no sense to me while she guided me toward a sofa. Morrison, you shouldn't go in there. I don't think you can handle seeing her like that. I looked at my reflection in the glass door and saw my younger self, my hands still smooth and free from the scars of a decade of manual labor. I took a few deep breaths, finally accepting the reality that I had been reborn. In my previous life, the moment I got the call about Sarah, I had raced to the hospital like a madman. I had even run 3 red lights to get here, but I was still too late back then. Holding that death certificate in my hands, I had been consumed by a bottomless well of regret. I had beaten my head against the wall like a lunatic. I blamed myself for not driving her to work that morning. Maybe it was the grief, or maybe I hit my head too hard. I collapsed right there in the hospital. By the time I woke up, Sarah's body had already been whisked away for cremation. All they left me was a small, cold urn. I spent my days locked in the house, clutching that urn and refusing to eat or drink. But the silence didn't last long, as lawyers from several major lending firms started showing up at my door. That was when I found out Sarah had named me her sole beneficiary. I began the agonizing process of sorting through her finances. To my shock, I discovered that Sarah's company had already been liquidated by my mother-in-law, Laura Thompson. All she left for me was millions of dollars in outstanding loans. Soon after, the bank foreclosed on the house. I was homeless and desperate. I went to Laura for help, but she refused to even open her door for me. Life became a living hell after that. I lived in a rotting shack on the outskirts of the city. The debt collectors hounded me every single day. I worked 4 different jobs just to survive and pay off the interest. Even with a court-order payment plan, my income was barely enough to keep me from starving. I had to suffer through illnesses because I couldn't afford a doctor. Then came that day, while I was digging through a dumpster. I saw Sarah, the woman who was supposed to have been dead for 10 years. She was in a car, laughing and joking with her first love, Henry Vance. I ran toward them, desperate to get a closer look. Sarah didn't even try to hide who she was. She laughed at me, mocking how my 40-year-old body looked like it belonged to a 70-year-old. She even threw a $100 bill at my feet. She told me it was a tip for all the hard work I'd done for her over the last decade. My heart gave out from pure, unadulterated rage. Sarah just stepped on the gas and drove away without a second glance. It was as if she had seen nothing at all. Remembering that moment, I made a silent vow. You used a fake death to escape last time, but in this life I'm going to make sure you actually die. Lisa kept trying to force a glass of water on me, but I had my wits about me this time and refused to touch it. I remembered clearly that in my previous life, I had blacked out right after drinking what she gave me. I was certain the water was drugged. Their goal was to keep me unconscious, so I would miss Sarah's cremation and never see her body. I set the glass down and walked straight to Sarah's bedside. I ignored Lisa as she tried to stop me. I pulled back the white sheet and saw that Sarah's cheeks were flush with color, and her breathing was perfectly steady. In my past life, I had been blinded by grief and stupidity, completely failing to notice the obvious. I raised my hand and delivered a stinging slap across Sarah's face. Sarah didn't even flinch. She must have been heavily sedated to make sure I didn't notice she was alive. That worked out perfectly for what I had in mind. Lisa let out a sharp shriek, clearly thinking I'd realized Sarah was faking it. "Morrison, please, you have to calm down. If you're upset, we can talk about this. We can explain everything." The memory of my decade of suffering sent a surge of fury through my veins. I didn't stop at the slap. I began to pummel Sarah's body with my fists. As Lisa looked like she was about to have a breakdown, I put on an act of devastated frustration. "I told you 1,000 times to stop working late and get your heart checked. Why wouldn't you ever listen to me? Now you've left me all alone. What am I supposed to do now?" Lisa relaxed slightly, assuming I was just lashing out in a fit of grief. But as I continued to strike her with such force, she grew nervous again. She stammered out a plea. "Morrison, stop. You're going to hurt her." I stopped and stared at Lisa as if she were an idiot. "What are you talking about, Lisa? Do you really think a dead woman can feel pain?" Lisa swallowed hard, clearly realizing her slip-up. She forced a nervous, awkward smile. "No, I didn't mean I just—" She trailed off, unable to find an excuse. I didn't give her the chance to explain. I just pulled out my phone and dialed a number. "Yes, hello. I'd like to donate my wife's organs. She just passed away. Please send someone over immediately." Lisa wanted to stop me, but she couldn't break character, so she frantically started typing an iMessage instead. The team from the Organ Donation Center arrived within minutes. I made sure to look like a man whose world had just collapsed. My wife was the most generous soul I ever knew. Now that she's gone so suddenly, I want her life to mean something by saving others. The lead doctor took my hand in a firm grip. "On behalf of the families you're helping, thank you. What exactly would you like to donate?" I glanced over at Lisa and let out a heavy sigh. It was her heart that gave out, so I'm not sure what's still viable. "Just take her and open her up to see what you can find, and if nothing works, donate the rest of her body to science." Lisa suddenly threw herself in front of the bed. "No, Morrison, you can't. Sarah told me she never wanted to be a donor. She was very clear about that. We have to respect her wishes." I wiped away my fake tears. "Lisa, I am her husband. The law says this is my call to make. You were just her friend. You're not family. We both know I'm the one who makes the decisions here. Besides, every minute you stand there arguing, those organs are deteriorating. You're a doctor. Lisa, don't you care about saving lives?" "The man is right, Dr. Reynolds. Please step aside," the donation staff added. But Lisa wouldn't budge an inch. "I've already called Sarah's mother. You have to at least let Laura say her goodbyes." So, she had contacted Laura Thompson. I nodded in agreement. I never actually intended to let them harvest her organs. I knew that the moment they made the first incision, the secret would be out. I didn't want to just expose her lie. I wanted to turn her fake death into a reality. I was only doing this to smoke out Henry or Laura. I wanted them to watch Sarah die and be unable to do a damn thing about it. It was also a way to gather evidence in case they try to frame me later. Laura Thompson burst into the room with her hair still in rollers, looking like she'd run straight out of a hair salon. She let out a visible sigh of relief when she saw Sarah's body was still intact. Then, she swung her hand and slapped me across the face. "You useless piece of trash. Sarah must have been cursed in a past life to end up with you. My daughter is dead because of you. And you want to carve her up? If anyone touches so much as a hair on her head, I'll destroy them." Laura aggressively shoved the organ donation team out of the room. "We're not donating anything. Go bother someone else." The donation staff had no choice but to leave, looking annoyed. Lisa breathed a sigh of relief and pulled the white sheet back over Sarah. Laura sat on the sofa and continued her verbal assault. "You pathetic loser. Your wife is dead, and you're not even thinking about a proper burial. You're going to let them use her for research like some kind of science experiment? Were you planning on letting them slice my daughter into pieces? If you want to be a hero, donate your own damn body. Why don't you just die right now, so I can give you away to science? I held my stinging cheek and let out a heavy sigh. Mom, I'm sorry, I was just trying to— Before I could finish, Laura slapped me again. Stop your talking and get out of here. I'm taking my daughter to the funeral home myself. I stayed silent, dropping to my knees in a show of feigned humility. I took the glass of water Lisa had tried to give me earlier and offered it to Laura. Laura, exhausted from all the screaming, didn't think twice before draining the glass. Lisa didn't have time to stop her. Within minutes, Laura had slumped over and fallen into a deep sleep. Lisa's face went pale, and she started to stutter again. Morrison, what are you doing? You're not going back to the donation idea, are you? I shook my head and made sure Laura was comfortable on the sofa. Of course not. Laura made her wishes clear, and I'll respect them. Lisa sighed in relief. Laura passing out like that isn't a good sign. You should probably take her to the ER, just to be safe. I can take care of Sarah's cremation arrangements myself. I couldn't possibly let you do that, Lisa. It's far too much to ask. You're the doctor. You need to look after Laura. I'll handle the funeral home. As I spoke, I was already on the phone with the crematorium, telling them to come pick up the body immediately. Lisa tried to protest. There's no rush for the cremation. Let's just wait until Laura wakes up. It's not like Sarah is going anywhere, I replied coldly. Lisa, Sarah's gone. We need to focus on the living now. You two were like sisters, yet you haven't shed a single tear today. You've been acting very strange, Lisa. What exactly are you up to? Lisa was starting to pace like a trapped animal. She tried desperately to wake Laura, but the woman wouldn't budge. By the time the funeral home staff arrived to take Sarah away, Lisa was in a full-blown panic. Lisa finally cracked and grabbed my sleeve. Her voice was shaking as she whispered, Morrison, wait, I think I just saw Sarah's hand move. We need to try and resuscitate her. I shoved the death certificate right in her face. Lisa, you need to think very carefully about what you're saying. If Sarah is actually alive, do you have any idea what kind of malpractice lawsuit your hospital will face? Do you have any idea what will happen to you? Declaring a living person dead is a crime. Lisa, it's state-sanctioned murder. The hospital might survive, but you'll be spending the rest of your life in a cell. So, tell me again, did you really see her move? Lisa went silent, her mouth hanging open as she realized the trap she was in. I gave a cold laugh, shoved her hand away, and climbed into the funeral home's van. I heard Lisa scream behind me as she started frantically dialing her phone. I looked down at Sarah's body on the stretcher and couldn't help but chuckle. In my last life, when I saw Sarah again after 10 years, she looked exactly the same. Time had been incredibly kind to her. There wasn't a single wrinkle on her face. I had thrown myself in front of her car, desperate to see if it was really her. I wanted to know if my eyes were playing tricks on me. I wanted to tell her how much I had missed her. Sarah had squinted at me for a long time before she finally recognized who I was. She laughed and said, Morrison, my God, it's only been 10 years and you look older than my grandfather. Back then, my voice was a rasp and my spine was permanently hunched. I didn't look 50, I looked 80. I had stammered out her name in disbelief. You're alive. Sarah and Henry Vance, who was sitting next to her, both burst into fits of laughter. I faked the whole thing just to get away from you, Morrison. She didn't have to say anything else for me to understand the depth of the betrayal. If she'd asked for a divorce, I would have given it to her. But a divorce meant she'd have to split her assets with me. It also would have ruined her reputation if people found out she was cheating. A fake death, however, was a clean break. She got to dump every cent of her debt on me while she walked away with all the cash. She got to start a new life with Henry Vance under a new name. I was too angry to even speak, but Sarah wasn't done mocking me. You know, I could hear everything you said in the hospital. The way you were sobbing was so pathetic, I'll never forget it. I didn't know a grown man could make noises like a dying goose. It was honestly the funniest thing I've ever heard. Ha. As she laughed, my heart seized up and I collapsed. Henry had yelled out, Honey, let's get out of here before he tries to sue us for hitting him. Sarah cursed about her bad luck and slammed on the gas, peeling away. She didn't care if I lived or died. My final memory was the sight of her taillights fading into the distance. Then everything went black. I was still lost in those bitter memories when I saw it. Sarah's finger twitched ever so slightly. It looked like she was finally realizing what was happening. The sedation was wearing off, and she was starting to wake up. I told the driver to step on it. "Sir, please, you have to hurry. My mother-in-law is trying to steal my wife's body for some medical research. I just want her to be at peace, intact." The driver nodded and floored it, the van speeding through the streets of Cook County. I leaned over and pressed my ear to Sarah's chest, listening to her heart beating strong and steady. I whispered all the things I never got to say in my previous life. "I know you're not dead, Sarah. I know all about Henry, and I know this whole thing is just a show so you can run away with him. You were going to leave me with every cent of your debt. But I'm not angry. In fact, I've decided to give you exactly what you wanted. You wanted to be dead, so I'm going to make sure you're cremated as quickly as possible. I know you can hear me, but I'm not sure if you'll be able to feel the heat. I hope you can, though. I want you to experience every second of it. After all, being burned alive is quite the unique way to go. You're probably wondering how I know all this or why I'm doing it. None of that matters, because I've already lived through this nightmare once. In my last life, I was the fool who believed you and lived a life of misery. So don't blame me. Sarah, this is just you paying your debts." Sarah's fingers were twitching now, but she couldn't move her body. A single tear escaped from the corner of her eye. I reached out and gently wiped the tear away. "Crying already? Save your tears for the furnace, Sarah." My phone was blowing up with calls from Lisa and Laura. But right now, I was just a grieving husband who couldn't be bothered with his phone. I wasn't in the mood to talk. Thanks to the driver's lead foot, what should have been a 30-minute drive took us 20 minutes. But the funeral home was packed today. There was at least an hour's wait for the furnace. I paced back and forth until I found the manager. My wife just died of a heart attack, and her mother collapsed when she heard the news. She's in the ICU right now, and I need to get back to her. Please, I need to get my wife settled so I can go be with her mother. I can't lose both of them today. The manager looked surprised. He'd never had someone try to jump the line for a cremation before. "I understand this is a difficult time, sir, but everyone else is waiting their turn. It wouldn't be fair to the other families." Even as he said it, his hand was held out expectantly, waiting for a bribe. I knew I didn't have much time, so I pulled out my phone and sent him $2,000. "Please, I'm an orphan and they're the only family I have left. I can't lose my mother-in-law, too." With the bribe in hand, the manager moved Sarah to the front of the line, and she was in the cremation chamber within 10 minutes. As the technician reached for the ignition switch, I stopped him. I didn't want him involved in my business. I wanted to be the one to end this myself. After I insisted, the technician stepped aside and let me take the controls. Just as I reached for the button, I heard Laura and Lisa's frantic voices at the door. "Stop! Stop the cremation right now." Laura was staggering toward us, still half-dazed from whatever was in that water. She collapsed at the entrance, screaming, "Stop! Get my daughter out of there!" Lisa lunged for my arm just as I was about to hit the button. "Morrison, wait! Laura needs to see her one last time." Laura was gasping for air, shrieking, "Get out of here! I won't let you burn my daughter. I'll take care of her myself. Now get her out of that machine." Even now, they were trying to keep the lie going. I dropped to my knees and cried out, "Mom, Sarah is at peace now. Please just let her rest. I am her husband, and I am going to stay with her until the end." A crowd was starting to gather around us. The technician looked at us, confused. What the hell is going on here? This is a place of business, not a theater. He reached for the ignition button again. Lisa and Laura lost it and lunged at him, their faces twisted with pure desperation. The technician jumped back to avoid them, and Lisa and Laura's momentum carried them forward. They slammed right into the control panel, and their hands hit the ignition button. The furnace roared to life, and the flames engulfed Sarah. Their screams filled the room, and everyone stared at them in horror. I kept my eyes fixed on the furnace. I knew the sedation must have worn off by now. I could see her silhouette through the glass, her mouth open in a silent scream as her hands clawed at the air. But with the chaos in the room, no one else saw a thing. A minute later, the room went quiet as everyone looked back at the furnace. The staff were whispering to each other in shock. I've never seen a body move like that before. It looked like she was trying to get out. Yeah, you get muscle spasms sometimes, but never anything like that. Good thing it's daytime, or I'd think I was seeing a ghost. I wiped away my fake tears, struggling to keep a smile from forming on my face. I put on my most heartbroken voice and said, "She loved her mother so much." She must have heard her voice and tried to see her one last time. I rubbed my eyes and looked at the flames. "Rest in peace, Sarah. Don't you worry. I'll take good care of your mother, and I'll make sure she joins you soon." Right as the words left my mouth, her hand finally went limp. It was over. I felt a massive weight lift off my shoulders, the memories of my past life finally fading away. Lisa ignored Laura, who was still on the floor, and rushed toward the furnace. She looked through the glass and went pale as a sheet. She started frantically hitting every button on the control panel. Why won't it stop? Put the fire out. The technician had to pull her away. He'd never seen a family member react like this. "I know you're upset, ma'am, but there's nothing we can do now. You're only making it harder for her to be at peace. Besides, these machines are automated. Once they start, they don't stop until the cycle is finished. You really need to calm down." Lisa collapsed onto the floor, her eyes glazed over as she started whispering to herself. "It's over, it's all over." She looked up at me with hollow eyes. "Morrison, we were calling you. Why didn't you answer your phone?" I sighed and looked away. I was too devastated to even look at my phone. All I could think about was how I was going to survive without her. Besides, isn't this what you do when someone dies? Why were you trying to stop it? Laura crawled toward me and grabbed my ankles. "You monster! You killed my daughter. Give her back to me." I sighed again, but didn't lift a finger to help her up. I just held up the death certificate for everyone to see. "Laura, I know you're hurting, but I didn't kill Sarah. The doctor said it was her heart. I had nothing to do with it. If you don't believe me, ask Lisa. She's the one who pronounced her dead and signed the papers." "Isn't that right, Lisa?" I turned to look at her. Lisa was frozen, her mouth opening and closing, but no sound coming out. If she said Sarah was alive, she'd be admitting to fraud and medical malpractice. If she said she was dead, Laura would never forgive her. Laura suddenly lunged and grabbed Lisa by the throat. You're the one who killed my daughter. She was alive, and you signed her death warrant. Now she's gone, and it's all your fault." I gasped and covered my mouth in fake shock. "What? Laura, what are you saying? Sarah was alive?" I looked back at the furnace. No wonder I thought I saw her hand move when they pushed her in. I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, but I guess I was right. Hearing that, Lisa started pulling at her hair in a blind panic. After a moment of frantic silence, she finally cracked. "It's true. She wasn't dead. We just sedated her. If you just waited a few more minutes, she would have woken up." I knew I had to push her even further. "What are you saying, Lisa? Are you telling me my wife was burned alive while she was conscious?" The entire room went cold. The technician's face was ghostly white as he whispered, "I knew it. I knew she was moving when the fire started." My God, that's murder. When Laura heard that, her eyes rolled back in her head and she collapsed onto the floor. I moved before anyone else could and slapped Lisa across the face again. "Lisa, have you lost your mind? How can you say something so horrible? My wife is gone and you're telling these sick lies." Lisa was dazed, clutching her cheek. "I'm not lying, I swear." I gave a cold, hard laugh. "Oh, really? Then why would you sedate a healthy woman and then declare her dead? If you're going to make up a story, at least make it sound realistic." Lisa was speechless, and the staff were starting to look at her with suspicion. They assumed she was just having a breakdown and went back to their duties. Once the cremation was done, I took the urn and stormed out of the building. I looked at Lisa one last time. "You've terrified Laura with your nonsense. You need to take her to the hospital." I would have loved to see Laura's face when she woke up, but I had more important things to take care of. I placed Sarah's urn right in the middle of the mantelpiece. Then I called my lawyer and started the paperwork to claim her estate and her company. In my past life, I was too broken to care about the business until it was too late. This time, I knew I had to move fast before Laura could try to seize control. I wasn't going to let this opportunity slip away. Once the paperwork was filed, I turned my attention to the debt. I knew Sarah better than anyone, and there was no way she would have given all that cash to Henry or Laura. I checked her accounts, but the money wasn't there. She had to have hidden it. I spent hours going through her bank statements until I found a recurring payment for a storage unit downtown. I went to the address and found exactly what I was looking for, bags of cash hidden in the back of the unit. I immediately called the bank and settled the most pressing debts. Once the business was taken care of, I sat back on the sofa with a glass of wine and toasted Sarah's photo on the wall. Thank you, Sarah. I've got the house, the company, and enough cash to live like a king, all without a cent of debt. I'm going to have a much better life than you ever did. I drank until I was numb and fell asleep right there on the sofa. I was woken up the next morning by someone pounding on the door. I rubbed my pounding head and went to see who it was. Lisa and Laura were standing there, along with a man who looked a bit older than me. It was Henry Vance, and he looked furious as he held the hand of a young boy who was a spitting image of Sarah. Was this her child? No wonder she'd always refused to start a family with me. She'd already had a son with Henry. All three of them looked exhausted, with dark circles under their eyes. It looked like they hadn't slept in days. And standing right behind them were two police officers. Laura didn't even wait to get inside before she pointed a finger at me. Officers, that's him. That's the man who burned my daughter alive. Arrest him right now. He deserves to suffer, just like she did. I knew this was coming. I just didn't expect them to move this quickly. I let out a weary sigh. Laura, please, this isn't funny. I pulled the death certificate out of my pocket. Officers, here's my wife's death certificate. My mother-in-law is in shock. She's having a hard time accepting what happened. The officers looked at the paperwork and nodded. Everything looks in order here. I sighed again, playing the part of the grieving husband. Sarah and I were married for 3 years. We were very happy. After she passed, I couldn't bear the thought of her body deteriorating, so I had her cremated as soon as possible. Is there something wrong with wanting her to be at peace? Laura clutched her chest, her face red. You liar. My daughter hated you. She only married you because Henry was still tied up in his own divorce. You did this on purpose. You rushed the cremation just so you could steal her company and her money. I called the office yesterday. I know what you did. I looked at her with a face full of faked disbelief, my eyes welling up with tears. Laura, you can say whatever you want about me, but I loved Sarah. If she didn't love me, why would she leave everything to me in her will? Laura was speechless for a moment, her mouth hanging open. Besides, you're saying she was alive? This is one of the best hospitals in Chicago. Do you really think they can't tell the difference between a living person and a corpse? Lisa herself told me that Sarah was brain dead and her heart had stopped. Does that sound like someone who's still alive to you? Laura looked at Lisa, waiting for her to back her up, but Lisa kept her head down. She knew that admitting the death certificate was a fake would end her career and put her in prison. The room went silent. Henry gave Laura's sleeve a sharp tug, and she finally shut her mouth. Henry took a deep breath and looked me in the eye. Morrison, Sarah was alive. She and I were together long before you came along. We only broke up because of a misunderstanding. I finally got my divorce and came back for her. She realized she still loved me, and this fake death was her only way to be free of you. I never thought you'd actually have her burned. Henry paused, his voice softening. Don't hate her, Morrison. She only did it because she didn't want to hurt you with a divorce. She was a good woman. Now that she's gone, we just want you to do the right thing for her son and give him the inheritance that belongs to him. I took a sip of water and looked at him, my voice dripping with mock outrage. You're lying. I turned to Laura, my face a mask of grief. Laura, I know you and Sarah had a difficult relationship, and I know she left you out of the will. But to bring this child here and try to claim he's hers just so you could get a piece of the estate, that's low even for you. Laura looked like she was about to explode, but she kept herself in check. You're the liar. Sarah and I were closer than anyone. This is her son. I'd bet my life on it. I pulled out the will and held it up. Then why aren't you in here, Laura? If you two were so close, why didn't she leave you a single cent? Why did she leave everything to me? Laura was silenced. and even Henry looked like he was starting to doubt himself. He couldn't exactly tell the truth, that Sarah had named me the heir just so I'd be the one stuck with the bills. I looked at the boy standing behind Henry and felt a cold surge of satisfaction. It all made sense now. The perfect wife routine was over because her real family had come back for her. But after everything I'd been through, I didn't feel a thing. I looked him in the eye and said, "If you want me to believe this boy is hers, show me the proof. I want to see a DNA test or a birth certificate." Henry and Laura both froze. "There's no test. Sarah had him at home," Henry stammered. "And we never got a formal birth certificate. But he is her son. I'm telling you." I waved a hand at the officers. "You see what I'm dealing with here, officers? They know she's gone, so they're using this kid to try and get their hands on her money. They're even trying to claim I murdered her. Their story doesn't even make sense." Laura was getting desperate. "I'll take the test myself. I'll prove I'm his grandmother. That will prove he's her son." The officer shook his head. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but that doesn't prove anything. All that proves is that you're related to the boy. It doesn't link him to Sarah Miller in any legal way. And even if it did, it doesn't prove she was your only child." I fought back a smile. I'd pushed for that cremation specifically to make sure they couldn't get any DNA from her. It looked like my plan had worked perfectly. Laura and Henry exchanged a panicked look, and Henry's jaw tightened. "I don't care about the kid. Sarah was alive when you put her in that machine. You're a murderer, Morrison. He shouldn't be allowed to touch a cent of her money." Henry was right, but he had to prove I killed her first, and that was never going to happen. I turned my gaze toward Lisa. "Lisa, tell them, was Sarah dead or alive when she left the hospital? You're a respected doctor with a family. Lisa, you should think very carefully about your answer." They might have forgotten, but I hadn't. It was their hands, along with Laura's, that had hit the ignition button. If Sarah had been alive, they were the ones who killed her. I framed their desperate scramble for the controls as a deliberate attempt to start the furnace. Laura was too stunned to even protest. Lisa's jaw set, and she looked away from Laura and Henry. She was dead. Morrison is telling the truth. I let out a slow breath of relief, but then Henry pulled out his phone. "I knew you'd lie for him, so I made sure to bring proof." Henry hit play on a video showing the four of them sitting in a living room, calmly discussing the details of the fake death. Sarah's voice, as grating as I remembered, came through the speakers. "I'll take the sedative. You make sure Morrison is out cold, and then tell him I've already been cremated. Once it's done, I'll give you $1 million. The video cut off before they could get to the part about the death. Lisa collapsed onto the floor, her face in her hands. I don't." Henry looked triumphant. "See? He's a murderer. He belongs in prison. The money belongs to Laura." I huddled into myself, looking terrified, while I carefully built up a surge of faked grief. "Officers, I want to file a report. These people planned a fake death behind my back and never said a word to me. I was out of my mind with grief. I had no idea she was still alive." I pointed a shaking finger at Lisa and Laura, and they knew the whole time. I was trying to donate her organs and give her a proper cremation, and they just watched. They wanted me to be the one to kill her without even knowing it. Also, they could swoop in and steal the money. I looked at Laura and Henry. I thought my wife was dead, so I followed her final wishes. Is that a crime? Of course it wasn't. They hadn't expected me to be so calm and collected. They thought I'd be a sobbing mess they could easily control. But I wasn't that man anymore. Rebirth had stripped away my naivety. From the second I woke up, I knew exactly what I had to do. I let out a choked sob and continued. "Laura, you were right there when I tried to donate her organs. If she was alive, why didn't you just tell me then? I would have given her a divorce if that's what she wanted. You tricked her into this insane plan. You're the ones who put her in that furnace. And then you watched as she was burned alive, just so you could blame it all on me. How could you be so heartless?" "Sarah was adamant that you had to believe she was dead," Laura stammered. "That's why I had to stop the donation without telling you the truth." I pulled out my phone. "And what about this? You were calling me while I was on my way to the funeral home. You knew exactly what I was doing." I was too upset to answer the phone, but why didn't you just send a text? "I was there for 10 minutes before the furnace even started. Why didn't you just tell me then? Instead, you stormed in and hit the ignition button yourselves. Laura and Lisa had no answer for that. I knew exactly what they were thinking. They thought they had plenty of time to stop me and keep the scam going. They'd panicked and made a fatal mistake. The police didn't know who to believe, as both sides were telling completely different stories. The officers took all of us down to the station for questioning. It took a few days for them to sort through the mess. The investigation showed that I was exactly who I claimed to be, a devoted husband who had no idea his wife was cheating. I never questioned her business trips or checked her iMessages. Everyone who knew us told the police we were a perfect couple. Even the security cameras in our house showed nothing but a happy marriage. There was no way for the police to know I'd been reborn. To them, I was just a man who loved his wife more than life itself, someone who could never have hurt her. Laura, Lisa, and Henry, on the other hand, couldn't keep their story straight. They had dozens of chances to tell me the truth. They waited until she was already gone before saying a word. Lisa and Laura had watched with their own eyes as Sarah was pushed into the flames. They never said a word to me, and they were the ones whose hands had hit the button. They claimed it was an accident, but nobody was buying it. The whole fake death scheme was so bizarre and twisted that it ruined their credibility. I was officially cleared as an innocent, grieving widower. The three of them were charged with attempted murder and fraud. 6 months later, they were all handed life sentences. Laura didn't even make it out of the courtroom. She had a massive heart attack and died right after the verdict was read. Lisa's husband filed for divorce and moved away with their kids, wanting nothing more to do with her. I heard Lisa try to end it all several times in prison, but she never succeeded. Henry kept sending me letters, begging me to come visit him. When I ignored him, he started pleading with me to take in Sarah's son and raise him as my own. I sent him a single letter back, telling him the boy had been sent to an orphanage in downtown Chicago. I am no saint, and I wasn't about to raise the son of the man who helped my wife betray me. I sold our old house and used the inheritance to buy a beautiful estate overlooking the lake. I kept Sarah's ashes with me, a constant reminder of my victory. I like to think that if there's an afterlife, she's watching me and seeing just how happy I am without her. Once you've seen the darkest parts of human nature, you realize that the only person worth living for is yourself, and I intend to enjoy every second of the life I've reclaimed.